Nice place. Wow. I feel like a televangelist with my picture up there. How you doing, buddy? No. Turn your Bible to Matthew 18. We'll start there in a couple of minutes. Miss Carolyn could not make the trip. She's not feeling well. And she was heartbroken. She couldn't come and be here with old friends and the congregation here. I want to do something. If you help build the swamp, some of you help build the swamp. Some of you would come and do maintenance for the swamp. Some of you were nurses. Some of you were cooks. Some of you were campers and counselors. If you fit any of those, please stand up. That's right. You know, Carol and I got to do that for 20 years. And honestly, I like kids a lot more than I like adults. I just telling the truth. The kids' problems aren't near as complicated as adult problems. And so I was an elder in 2 congregations and a minister for several. And I'm just saying, camp was, we just would escape every summer and go out and, you know, have s'mores and go to the canteen, have a good time. So we loved it. We loved that. We loved influencing kids. And like, I have 2 sons. Carol and I have 2 sons. We got lots of kids. And Josh and Amanda obviously are 2 of them. Are you smarter than a 5th grader? We got college students here. Big brain college students. Right? And are you smarter than you remember that TV show? Are you smarter than a 5th grader? And I'd watch that and I'd say, I got this. Then we'd get to geography. No, I hardly ever was smarter than a 5th grader because 5th graders learned, you know, now, when I was going to school and we wrote our dinosaurs, took notes on stone tablets. That's not funny. You know, it was different today, man. Kids are smart. But anyway, that was a TV show, and so I want to give you a test today. Sorry. I know the semester's just starting. Pop quiz. Are you smarter than a 5th grader? Okay. You're going to take this test. There's going to be 3 questions we go through, okay? You ready? You have to write anything down because this is easy. In Matthew 18, it says in verse 1, at that time the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Right? Who is it? What a question. Can you imagine going to work tomorrow and say, who's the greatest person here? Is it me? What a question. What ambition they had. Wasn't all good, but they were ambitious. And he called a little child to him, a 5th grader. I don't know how old he was. And placed the child among them and said, truly, I tell you, unless you change, to these people who've asked the question, who's the greatest? He said, let me take you back here. Unless you change and become like little children, you ain't going to heaven. Forget about who's the greatest. You're not even going to get on the bus. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes once his child, in my name welcomes me. So he says, you got to be like a little kid. Now, we spent 20 years at camp, learned a lot about kids. And the first question is, do you have the faith of a little kid? Make you go, Do you have the faith of a little kid? Now, there were some boys in the Old Testament they called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, when I was in 4 years old or 5, I'm not sure which I was, but Miss McCoy, my Sunday school teacher, had taught us that story, and she said, who knows the names of the people that we're talking about? And I'm giving it this. I always open my mouth, get in trouble. I said, I know. And she said, who is it, Sonny? I said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Billy Goat. The poor lady laughed so hard. And so you know how young people are? Brash, rash. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now understand this, they were princes in Israel. They were the cream of the crop. They were the top of their class. They were awesome. And then they were put into slavery. And when they got put into slavery, they did great. They did everything and they excelled along with Daniel. But they just weren't going to bow down to some golden image, 90 feet tall. I'd like to know how much that thing weighed and how much money it cost for a golden statue 90 feet tall. Anyway, so Nebuchadnezzar hears that they're not bowing down to it. And he's ticked. And he's the king of the world. And here's what they say in Daniel chapter 3. Furious with rage, verse 13, I think. Yeah. Furious with rage. I don't know how scared I would be if the king of the world came to me and he was furious. Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I've set up? Now, I'm a reasonable fella. Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, I don't know what that is, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. So he's ticked, but he's giving them a chance, right? But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Now, these guys are teenagers at the most. They're young men, and they're teenagers. You know, sometimes you have to go along to get along. Except that was just a bridge too far for them. They couldn't do it. And here's their answer. I love it. Now, if they'd have been 40, I don't think they would have answered exactly like this. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, King, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo. We just won't do it. Now, that's a kid for you, isn't it? That's an 18-year-old. You know, I have an 18-year-old granddaughter. She must be the smartest person in the world because she knows everything. And if you don't believe it, ask her. And she has an opinion about everything. The problem is she's exactly like I was at 18. Except she's a whole lot smarter than I was. You know, you remember when you were at the pinnacle of your faith? I mean, you weren't afraid. You weren't worried. You weren't concerned about stuff. I remember when Carol and I were in Louisville, Kentucky, and we were getting paid right above the poverty line. We were just right above the poverty line. And I never dreamed about retiring. I never thought about that. Man, I was going to save the world. And I'm so glad I had that in me, because my faith was strong at the time. And God had told me he would take care of me, and in spite of me, he's taking care of me and taking care of my wife and taking care of our children. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had lots of faith as young men. You know what happens to us? We get disappointed. Stuff happens. I don't know about you, but my goal was, or my dream was, that I would die in my sleep at 90 after I'd just come back from a trip of giving money away to poor children and run a marathon. Yeah, it hadn't worked out exactly like that. Because you have this is how it's going to be. See, we get disappointed. People leave us. Husbands and wives leave us. People fire us. People do things, and we lose our faith. And Hebrews 2 says you can drift away. See, what happens to our faith is it gets hit. You get a hit. You get another hit. You get another hit. And if we're not careful and we're not sharing with people and we're not reading God's word, it just slowly ebbs away. Sometimes we lose our faith over tragedies. 8 years ago, we lost our granddaughter in a tragedy. She was 3 years old. It just about killed me. I went back to the church in Athens where we were preaching, and I said, I don't think I have anything to give you right now. I've got to sit down for a while. It was a tragedy. And I had to decide, though. Okay, I've trusted God all these years. Am I going to trust him now? I can't tell you how many people we've been able to help go through tragedy because I didn't lose my faith. And then we just get busy living and we neglect our faith. So my first question is, do you have the faith of a kid? What do you do when you're hurt by others? I got to read this part of my book. I'm here. I asked Rick if I could come. I've written a book called Swamp Tales, Lessons I Learned at the Swamp. And I've written down all the mistakes I made, and that's really what the book's about. And this is one of the mistakes I made, and I almost really hurt somebody. So we had Carolyn, my wife, she was the game person, and so we found this ball online. It was 5 feet tall, the ball. And some of you have played it, and it's big around, and it weighed 15 pounds. The ball did. It's called swamp ball. Now, swamp ball, and we didn't know what we were going to do with it, but she said, I'm going to get the ball. I said, let's get the ball. So we get to camp, and Carolyn says, well, what do you think we'll do? I said, what we'll do, we'll put the swamp ball right in the middle of the field. And we'll put one team in this end zone and one team in this end zone, and they'll run. And it sounded so good at the time. And they'll run. And she said, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. Now, I will say that after that, she and Jeff Robaugh fired me from coming up with games. And so I said, okay, let's do that. So, okay, well, we'll try it. So we put them, and I blow the whistle, and here they come. We had this one kid, Morgan, and he's running fast, and he's quick, but he's little, and he's small, and he's fast, and he gets there a tenth of a second before this big kid gets there. And so here's what happens. Our first attempt at swamp ball had Morgan in one of the cabins. Morgan was about 12 years old and a great athlete. He was small in stature, but very fast. I blew the whistle, and both cabins of boys raced to the ball from their end of the field. Morgan got to the ball a fraction of a second before the other team. He hit the ball first, just as the other team hit the ball a fraction of a second after him. I watched in horror as Morgan became airborne. That is not funny. I watched in horror as Morgan became airborne. Yes, he was literally flying through the air. He went about 4 feet in the air and 5 yards backward before he landed. It is amazing how time slows down when you are experiencing a catastrophe. As he was airborne, I wondered what I was going to tell Katie, his mom. Thoughts of how I would explain this horrible accident to the police. I was considering whether I was going to have to start a prison ministry from the inside. To my surprise and wondrous relief, he jumped up and continued in the game unfazed. Now you know why Miss Carolyn and Jeff took over the games. You see, I could have really hurt him. I mean, no joke. He just jumped up and ran. I am so happy when he's doing that. But I didn't mean to hurt him. It wasn't my plan to do anything to Morgan. I was just playing the game. I just didn't think through it, right? You know, if you've been around a while as a Christian, do you know that you've been hurt? People have said stuff to you, sometimes stupid stuff. You know what I did to hurt people? I didn't mean to. I didn't believe in the prosperity gospel of if you say, Jesus, I need a new car, bless me or whatever. I didn't really believe that. That doesn't make sense to me. But what I did believe was that if you were faithful, your children would turn out without any problems. How stupid is that? That's not real, because everybody, last time I checked, has free will. Unless they're in jail, they don't have that, but anyway. Has free will. And so I was wrong. I taught that wrong. And I wish I hadn't, but I did. Matthew 18 says, forgive us our trespasses is what? Let's just take that and throw it away, right? That passage. Lord, please, all the stuff I've done, all the terrible sins well, listen, don't forgive any of those unless I forgive people who've hurt me. Isn't that what it says? Yeah, but you don't understand, the people who hurt me, or mean about it. That's not what it says in Matthew 18. And here's the thing. What I don't like is when I forgive somebody and they don't care. See, I want them to care. Oh, I'm sorry, I hurt, you know. I want some. No. Morgan could have gotten on me and fussed at me, but he didn't. You know, there's some of us in here, you seriously need to take Matthew 18, and you need to go get it right with some people. You do. Because if you're going to be a disciple and go to heaven, God expects you to do that. And that's not easy. Now, that doesn't mean I want to go on vacation with them. Right? I don't want to do that. It don't mean we're going to get together around the campfire and sing Kumbaya. We're not going to do that. But I can forgive. I don't have to like them. I just got to forgive them. And how you know if you've forgiven them? When you see them, you don't feel weird. You just don't feel weird. And let me tell you something. Been around as long as I have, I had to work on that. To forgive some people and forgive people of what they said and did to my kids. Forgive them. I'm telling you, you want to have the faith of a little child, you need to learn to forgive. Third question. So do you have faith of a kid? Do you forgive like a kid? Do you dream dreams like a kid? We were at camp, and this kid came up to me. He was 13. And he was one cool dude. I knew him and his family. You know, sometimes there's one kid that gets all the good stuff. This was one of those families where he got it all. And he set me down and he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Sonny." I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm going to be the President of the United States." And he meant it. And you know what I knew? He wasn't going to be the President of the United States. He wasn't going to do that. He came from the wrong background. He didn't have the money. He didn't have all the things. He wasn't going to do that. Some kids come to camp and they're in the 8th grade and they are legends in their own mind about basketball or football. And you know what? I get all the kids, every year I'd get them all together and say, "You're not going to go to college and play sports. Knock it off. Freaks of nature do that. You're not one." You look at them. I went down on the field one time, University of Georgia. I thought I was in the land of the Nephilim. Giants. I'm talking about giants. And so now, when I was in the 8th grade, I don't want to brag, but I was an all-star quarterback. I got voted on the all-star team. Now, I was young. I was behind a year in terms of, like, I started school when I was 5, so I'm like 14 when I go to high school. The problem, and I was going to be a quarterback for the University of Georgia and then for the Green Bay Packers. That was my jam. But when I got to, as a freshman in high school, I was 5'1", by 5'1". Now quit laughing at me. And I had a flat top and white and black saddle Oxfords. I was styling and profiling, man. You see, the dream I had wasn't really realistic. But that's what I wanted to do. You know, when Carol and I, we went to camp, she went to camp as a kid, and I only went as a college student to be a counselor. I went for a couple of years, but I knew that's what I was supposed to do. You know, you're lucky when you know what you're supposed to do. And so I thought, well, okay, you know, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to go, I got my master's degree in Bible, so we were going to go back, and my dream was to run the camp. The guy retired when I was 30, and I thought, well, I'm ready. You know what a disaster that would have been for me at 30 to try to go run a camp? That would have been, I wasn't ready. And so my dream went, so I got busy in the ministry trying to help people go to heaven. And so 10 years later, Carolyn talks to Kim Sapp and says, we'd like to have a camp for a couple of weeks. And it started. Now, what we've done there is so much bigger than what happened at camp. Do you know that over 30,000 kids have been through the swamp? We never kept records. We're just guessing, but that's on the conservative end. Jeff Rohrbaugh has taken Swamp Corps to 17 countries. They just got back from Taiwan doing the same thing our kids do at camp every summer. That dream that I had was so small. And God says, you're not ready. Plus, I got something else for you to do. It's going to be a lot bigger. That was wonderful. Maybe you got dreams you've given up on. I talked to somebody the other day. This is such a great story. For 15 years, she's been praying for her granddaughters to know Jesus. 15 years. The other day, she asked her granddaughter, would you like to read the Bible, the book of Proverbs? And her granddaughter said, yes, ma'am. That took God 15 years to answer yes. And that's been a dream of hers. Have you given up preaching about your dreams? Talking about your dreams? Have you given up your dreams and just kind of settle in? I'm just going to kind of settle in, and when the Lord takes me, you know. But don't you have something you want to do? I'm going to tell you a story that only God can do. It was 1961, 62. I don't quite remember which year. I went to the Underwood Street Church of Christ. And I was there. It was a Sunday night. I remember the guy up there, and he was a missionary from Calcutta, India. And he said, now understand, it's 61. I'm from Dalton, Georgia. Going to Atlanta 90 miles away was like a big deal. I was not a world traveler, still not, but I certainly wasn't then. And he said, what happens every morning in Calcutta, they have these big carts pulled by oxen, and they take them through the street, and all the people who have died that night are thrown onto the carts. And I just couldn't hardly breathe. And here's the thought I had. Why am I here and not there? Why did God put me here and not there? And it dawned on me, I'm supposed to do something for him. Don't know what it is, I'm supposed to do something for him. But I remembered that story. When I was 65, that was 10 years ago, not giving up on that dream, because I had other dreams, camp and, chemical recovery and preaching and all that kind of stuff. So this little lady comes to me. Her name is Molly. She's this tall. She's like a weeble. She walks like a weeble. She's 85. And she is a force of nature. She just got back from going to, in Eastern Europe, to 8 countries preaching to women in churches. 85. I don't even know how she gets around. I mean, we go to lunch, and it's like you can take a nap from the time it takes you to get to the car to the table. And she walks up to me and she says, "Sonny?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I need $50. I said, "First of all, you've got the $50, okay? I respect her so much. She's a little rough around the edges. She kind of upright in your face." And I said, "What are we doing with that $50? She says, "We're buying milk for orphans in India." I said, "Here's the problem, Molly. You're going to need $50 next month. That's not going to work." So I called the people in India, and we worked out. I thought we were going to do chickens, build coops and all for 50 chickens and lay eggs and da-da-da. They said, "No, let's do cows." So we bought 3 cows. I called up a friend of mine who had just adopted a little girl. I said, "I need some money." I said, "You just adopted a little girl. These little girls in this orphanage, every one is HIV positive. So they're HIV positive, so they're never going to get married. And they can't even get enough milk." And I think about my granddaughters, what I would do to give them the milk they needed. And I thought, this ain't going to work for me. And so we got the cows going, and we got a shepherd. And they built a thing to put them in. So now that was 10 years ago. We've had a bunch of cows. They sell them, and so we got that working. But the dream I had when I was a little boy gnawing at me. And so I called them up. I said, "We got to do something else. These little girls, if they don't go to school, if they don't get an education, they're going to be on the street." Some of them have come from the street because they've been abandoned because they're HIV positive. And then they got granny homes. 3 granny homes. And if you are in India and you don't have a son but a daughter, and he doesn't decide to take you into his home, then you're out of luck. You're on the street. And there's no Social Security. And so we have 3 granny homes where they bring these women in, these old women in, and they keep them until they pass. Some of them have been there for 20 years. You think that's a good work? Shake your head this way. And so I said, what are we going to do? And so I got with the elders in our congregation, and we're coming up with this really cool plan, and we're going to take these girls, and we're going to get them educated, and we're going to send them to college, and we're going to get them trained to go be able to do work. And these grannies, not only are we going to help take care of them, we're going to spoil them. My grandmother was the most influential person in my life as a kid, and I am doing it in homage to her. But you see, that was a dream I'd forgotten about. Here's the kicker. God never forgot about my dream. He hadn't forgot about your dream I don't know what your dream is, what you want to be, what you want to become, but you need to go back and say, I want to dream like a little kid. I want to dream like a little kid who says, I'm going to be the president. Or like me when I'm in the 8th grade saying, I'm going to be quarterback of the University of Georgia. I had no chance, none. But God did something. He used me. What's he going to use you for? Are you retired from being a Christian? Kind of just biding your time. So, how'd you do on the faith test? How'd you do on the forgiveness test? Did you pass? And how'd you do on the dream test? Did you pass? I'll be out there. I'm going to take some books. If you want me to sign them, I will. It's been great to be here. I want to thank you. God bless you all.